Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and motel murders. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at Strange Darling.
Love doesn't have to be something that develops. The purest, most primal kind can hit you like a wave. I felt that for you when you had your hand around my throat.
Let a lady down on her birthday now, can I?
This 2023 American thriller takes place in rural Oregon, following a man and woman's one-night stand that devolves into a cat-and-mouse game of murder. It is divided into 6 chapters in non-linear order and presented as a dramatization of the pinnacle of a serial killer's years-long murder spree in the western United States. Strange Darling was written and directed by J.T. Mollner of Outlaws and Angels and the upcoming Stephen King adaptation The Long Walk. He developed the story as we were just getting out of COVID lockdowns, and they began filming just 6 months later. The film's chapterized structure is pretty unique, and it was designed to captivate audiences and maintain intrigue throughout the story. The film stars Willa Fitzgerald from The Goldfinch as the Lady, Kyle Gallner from Smile as the Demon, Madison Beatty from The Clovehitch Killer as Gail, Bianca Santos from Ouija as Tanya, and Steven Quezada from Breaking Bad as Pete. It was shot on site in Oregon on 35mm film, which the film makes very clear in the opening credits. Cinematography was handled by Giovanni Ribisi from Avatar in his cinematographic debut, and the score was composed by Craig DeLeon of End of the Road. The film was produced by Miramax, which very quickly became a very tense affair. Apparently, Miramax's CEO at the time, Bill Block, shut production down for a week during filming because he and other executives absolutely hated what Mollner was sending them. They eventually backed off when other producers reminded them that they'd already sank millions into the project, but at this point it caused several scenes to be cut from the film in order to keep up with shooting deadlines. And then once filming was wrapped, Miramax went behind Mollner's back and re-edited the film into a linear story that they thought would sell better. Mollner threatened to take his name off the entire project, but fortunately test audiences all unanimously enjoy the non-linear version more, so it got to stay. But I always hate to hear about films being fucked up because of issues with the producers and executives. Like, y'all hired an artist to make something for you, let them cook for a little bit. Strange Darling premiered at Fantastic Fest in 2023 and had a limited theatrical release in 2024 before being released on VOD. It's been met with largely positive reviews, with fans loving the bold visuals and how the story unfolds, while critics have taken issue with certain elements I'll talk about after the breakdown. It currently has a 96 and 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, along with a 3.5 on Letterboxd, so the reviews are resoundingly positive though. That being said, this is absolutely the kind of film that a review is going to destroy a first-time viewing of, so if you haven't seen Strange Darling, I implore you to stop the video now and go give it a watch before continuing. And thank you so much to my patron, the 4 Mood Groups, for requesting Strange Darling for me to review. It had been on my watch list for a while, but I never got around to putting it on, so I'm really excited to share my still developing thoughts about it here. But hey, with all that said, it's probably time we get started. Y'all better go get a room in a motel for this one, cause we're watching Strange Darling. The movie opens in black and white as we overhear the lady ask the demon, yes, that's what we're going to be calling them, if he is a serial killer. Well, a knockoff Texas Chainsaw text crawl informs us about a prolific serial killer who took the western United States by storm from 2018 to 2020. And what we're about to watch is a dramatization of the killer's final rampage. The opening credits also show us the lady, who seems to be missing an ear, running through the woods, as well as a car chase. As I mentioned, this is a non-linear 6-chapter story, meaning we aren't watching it in order. We're actually starting with chapter 3, Can You Help Me, Please? The coke-snorting demon is chasing the lady down a country road, managing to blow her off the road with a shotgun. He nearly runs her over with his truck, but she manages to dodge it and flee into the woods. She comes across some crap a camper left behind, including a bottle of vodka she uses to disinfect her missing ear. Also, a cigarette for the vibes. Damn, I gotta say these Oregon forests are fucking beautiful. The lady jumps a fence into the property of some doomsday preppers as we shift into chapter 5, Here Kitty Kitty. At this point, the demon has located her, so the lady is hiding inside of a freezer. Lots of nods to TCM here. He searches the quirky home, blasting any potential hiding spaces before checking them. Aw, looks like he killed this old guy too. Not cool, Kyle. He comes across a couple of frozen chickens in the yard, prompting him to blow a hole in the freezer and her shoulder. Now we jump all the way back to chapter 1, Mr. Snuffle, to see how all this started. The demon and the lady arrive at a motel, and it can be inferred that the two met at a bar and came here to hook up. The demon is apparently in an unhappy marriage, but the lady isn't bothered by that. He is somewhat of a gentleman and offers to call it all off, but the lady says she's down if he can ensure her safety. She voices the very real concern of violence and asks him point blank if he's a serial killer. He says no, which is good enough for her to get the demon to act out her favorite sadomasochistic fantasies. At first, the poor guy can't bring himself to truly choke her, but once he sees how disappointed she is, he turns it up to 11. YouTube does not play around with this kind of stuff, but let's just say it gets violent and not totally consensual. But that's pretty much all a ruse, as the two of them were acting out her fantasy to be assaulted by a serial killer. Mr. Snuffleupagus is her safe word. During a break, she tells him to go even harder when she's scared. She really wants to feel like he's going to rape and kill her. All is going well in its own fucked up way, at least until the lady gets a strange look on her face. Now we move on to chapter 4, The Mountain People. This is Genevieve and Frederick, the quirky doomsday preppers that live in the woods and fucking love butter. Hey, me too. Low-key, I'd eat the fuck out of that. Their puzzle-making competition is interrupted by the bloody young woman, who they greet with bear spray. They're disappointed it wasn't the Squatch that attacked her, but they are willing to share their breakfast and call the police. Sadly, the lady don't fuck with cops, so when Genevieve comes downstairs, she finds her husband stabbed to shit. That's right, suckers, the lady is actually the serial killer. They head outside so she can lock Genevieve in a tool shed, but she makes a run for it and the demon spots her from afar. She empties out the freezer and hops inside, which is what happened just prior to chapter 5. But now we're jumping to chapter 2, Do You Like to Party? She's hoping to spice things up even further with some nose candy. The demon admits that he hasn't touched that stuff in a long time, but he's willing to give it a go because it makes her super horny. But what the demon doesn't see is that she has a secret second stash that she has him take. She cuts off their makeout sesh and starts getting dressed, mocking the demon for thinking he was going to get laid. He gets pissed and dressed to leave while she hypes herself up in the bathroom, bringing out her handy-dandy switchblade. The poor fucker only made it like 10 feet out the door thanks to the ketamine and gets dragged back inside. She claims she didn't want to do this to him, but I'm not sure I believe her. She gags him with a sock and gets to work with her switchblade off screen. She scopes out his wallet in the bathroom and realizes the demon is actually a cop, which makes things a bit more complicated. She's carved the initials EL into his chest, which stands for the Electric Lady, a nickname the police have dubbed the infamous killer. But just as she prepares to stab him in the throat, the demon whips out a gun he had hidden in his other sock and blasts her ear off. We saw him grab it earlier in the evening. She makes a run for it in her undies back to the front desk while the demon regains mobility. It also helps that he's using all that coke as a pick-me-up. The hotel manager wants to call 911, so she gets the Fred treatment, and she steals the clothes and keys from a custodian. And all that finally brings us to Chapter 6, Who's Gary Gilmore? The demon has just blasted the lady in her hiding spot and cuffs her to the freezer. He calls up fellow officer Pete to meet him out there, simply saying he's gotten himself into some trouble. She mocks him for being unable to finish her off, just like in the bedroom, but he's content with the decision to not get a life sentence for killing her. She laments her own fear of death, wishing she had the bravery to request the firing squad like murderer Gary Gilmore. The lady claims that just for a moment she truly loved him while he was choking her. But then she hits him with Genevieve's bear spray. He stumbles forward into her clutches and she proceeds to bite a big old chunk out of his neck. The demon bleeds out and dies on the floor as the electric lady seemingly mourns him. She can't reach the handcuff keys but does snag his gun, and she has a very devious plan. She pulls down her pants as officers Pete and Gail arrive, making it look like she is the victim of a sexually motivated attack. Pete is skeptical and wants to wait for backup, but empathetic Gail is quick to believe her and sets the woman free. Despite his reservations, Pete agrees to help Gail get her in the car to go to the hospital. Sadly, they run into Genevieve down the road, who is immediately headshot by the lady. The officers hand over their guns as the electric lady introduces herself, and she has Gail run into the woods while Pete continues driving. And that takes us to a surprise epilogue, the electric lady. Pete drives her further down the road before she has him stop so she can consider her next move. When Pete asks her why she kills, she tells him that she sometimes doesn't see humans, just devils. She pops Pete in the head and pops out of the car. She flags down a passing truck, once again acting like a desperate victim. But this time the lady glimpses herself as a devil in the side view mirror. She tries to pull her gun on the driver, only for her to pull a blicky of her own and immediately fire. The woman calls 911 as the electric lady considers pulling her second pistol, but she opts not to as she convulses and the screen fades to black and white. The lady slowly dies in the passenger seat to end the movie. And that's Strange Darling. Yeah, this one was mostly a really pleasant surprise for me. For full disclosure, I was able to watch it before reading any reviews, so I didn't have the twist spoiled for me. The story itself isn't anything brand new, but it's really the way that it's presented that makes Strange Darling really stand out. The non-linear chapters add a level of intrigue and mystery to the film, but not to the point where it feels like a total crutch that everything is leaning on. The film has fantastic visuals and creative shots, a really fun soundtrack, and the moments of violence really do stand out. That being said, I definitely clocked the twist within a couple of minutes of starting the film. They were trying so hard to make the demon seem like the bad guy early on, it was clear that the only reason to break the story up was to hide info from the audience to save the reveal for later. But clocking it super early isn't a big detractor for me, as it's still done well, and it's done pretty early in the film, all things considered. If it was done like in the last 5 minutes, that would have been annoying, but it's pretty early. We still get a lot of time with the electric lady once the twist is revealed, and we get a pretty deep look into the psychology of the character. She seems to have some kind of psychological condition where she occasionally sees people as demons. We only ever get a glimpse of the demon for like a millisecond, but perhaps more interestingly, we get to see how the lady's expression and mood changes when it happens. She's able to flip a switch from bubbly and sarcastic to deadly serious, like she has a job she has to do and she's gonna get it done by any means necessary. She says it wasn't her intention to kill the man, whose real name is RC, until she saw the demon in him, and I'm not totally sure if I buy that story or not, especially considering how quick she is to kill other people in the film. But at the same time, she tries her best to spare those that she can, at least if they're women. It does seem like the lady's murders are either sexually motivated or at least somewhat based on gender, as from what we can tell in the film, she primarily targets men. Based on what we see in the film, it can be assumed that her MO is luring men with the hopes of sex to motels and other isolated locations, where she first has them act out her fantasies of being rapists and murderers. There is a lot to read into all of this thematically, but for a moment I'm just going to look at this through the lens of the lady's motives. On one hand, this could just totally be a kink that's a really big coincidence with the fact that she's a murderer, but I feel like it goes deeper than that. Near the end, she shares her own desire for and fear of death, so this murder foreplay is the closest thing she can get, but when she gets too close, she's able to call out Mr. Snuffleupagus and return to safety. It's a way for her to almost cosplay as her own victims, as well as a way to view the inner demons within all of these men. It's a way for her to almost cosplay as her own victims and experience what they are, while at the same time being a way for her to see the inner demons and the violent nature hiding underneath the surface of these men. She notes to the demon that men will do literally anything to get laid, and she laughs right in his face when he finally realizes they're not gonna have sex. This is when the men get angry, expressing their expectation of this woman to perform their wishes. This is when she seizes control and kills them. Now I'm going to zoom out and explore how this fits into the larger themes of the film, but I do want to first acknowledge that there is a lot of discourse about Strange Darling, its story, and the creator's motivations for making it. I mentioned that the film largely has really positive reviews across the board, but if you go to Letterboxd, you'll actually see that a lot of the most popular reviews are negative and center around the film being sexist, misogynistic, and anti-woman. Those are claims that I don't agree with, but I can definitely see where they're coming from. Basically, a lot of these arguments stem from when the cops find the lady in her staged sexual assault. The man cop is suspicious and wants to investigate, but the woman cop instantly wants to help the woman who appears to be the victim of a horrible attack. We as the audience know the truth, so the man cop being suspicious makes him seem like a reasonable and rational person, whereas the woman is made to look like an overly sympathetic fool. He is rude, mean, and sexist to his partner, at one point calling her a dumb bitch. Of course, the man cop is proven right, and the woman cop is absolutely shook by this awful trick that was played on her. The argument that I was seeing from a fair amount of reviews is that they feel the film has an anti-Me Too movement stance, suggesting that we shouldn't always immediately jump to the victim's side when they accuse someone of rape, because you never know when one of those evil, tricky women could be lying. If I thought that that was the case and that was the message of this movie, I would be bashing this shit today. Let me be really clear about that, but that is not what I got from this film when I watched it. A few people in the review cited that a lot of men laughed when the woman cop was called a dumb bitch by her partner, arguing that the scene was therefore meant to be played for laughs. I can't speak for the men who laughed at that, but I can say that I was not laughing and I was not viewing it as a scene meant for laughs. The shit was downright uncomfortable and tense, and his comment was a moment of furious sexism. And to me, those exact kind of moments are exactly the point of the film and the lady's character. It's easily overlooked because there is a female serial killer on screen, but to me the most impactful moments are when the male character's true colors are shown. When they realize they've been played, both the demon and Pete resort to angry name-calling rooted in sexism. At the end of the day, both of these men think they are smarter than the women around them and do think less of them deep down. A lot of people felt icky about things that the demon and Pete said, which is very valid, but I think some folks determined that we're supposed to identify with these men, which I believe is incorrect. Neither of them are good guys by any means. The demon is cheating on his wife with a stranger in a motel, performing kinky strangulation and giving up years of sobriety just to get his dick wet. Pete is a dismissive asshole who values the dead man on the floor more than the living woman. Despite being right about investigating more, he showed a clear lack of care about the lady and her suffering. They are not good guys, and I fully believe that we are not supposed to read them as such. I think to say that this film is arguing that we should not trust women in these scenarios is a big stretch. For me, this plays out just like something like Gone Girl, where it's a particular woman using this set of circumstances to her advantage, but it's a really heinous kind of act to do so in the first place, and it stands out as something that most people would not do. Yeah, it's super fucked up, but under the right conditions with a fucked up protagonist, it's really smart. So to reiterate, I don't think that the film is a call to arms against the Me Too movement or trusting women. Sure, there will be a few guys that take that away from this, I'm sure, but there's also guys that don't realize Fight Club and Starship Troopers are satire. I suppose at a certain point you're gonna see what you want to see in this film and its writing. The whole film is about interrogating our own expectations when it comes to these characters and their gender, and actively denying those expectations. We immediately assume the man is the serial killer and the woman is the victim, which makes sense given the statistics on serial killers and the films made about them. But in the end, we are denied that. It also interrogates our ideas around consent and what can be expected in a sexual encounter. We expect the characters to fuck just like the demon did. We are denied that as well. When the men in this movie are denied what they feel they are owed, they become angry. So the question this movie poses is, what do we do when we are denied what we feel is owed to us? Do we get angry? Do we lash out? Do we take it? If anything, this is a film that gives you enough murky situations and room for interpretation that a lot of people will take away very different things from it. In some ways that's good, and some ways it's bad. I never want a film to tell me what to think, but I do want it to tell me what it thinks, or at least present the questions it's asking in an engaging way. I think Strange Darling is largely doing that third option of asking, but when you do that with such personal, painful subject matter, it's bound to rub some people the wrong way. And while I seemingly just came to the defense of the film and its political messaging, I do think there are a lot of moments in the film where it kind of fumbles its themes. The dialogue for the scenes with the cops is particularly bad. The two just become archetypes to argue these two points of view. They don't even feel like real people. Suddenly all the nuance between characters was gone and they were just hitting these big talking points. It almost felt theatrical. I'm also a bit confused by the inclusion of the old Doomsday couple. I'm really not sure what they added to the larger story aside from more kills and adding some quirky personality to it. And while I generally like the non-linear storytelling happening here, the big red title cards and a lot of the overly artsy shots going on sometimes give Strange Darling the feeling that it's trying a little too hard to be cool. This kind of feels like if a Quentin Tarantino movie and a Lars von Trier movie had a baby. On one end, I appreciate the artistic approach to controversial subjects, but on the other, it sometimes feels like these subjects are being used to be provocative more than the director has something meaningful to say about them. Honestly, I'm still stewing on the themes and motivations of the characters and the filmmakers. It's definitely a film I'm going to revisit soon so I can cement my thoughts even further. But I can say that I really enjoyed the film's narrative structure, complex character work, gorgeous visuals, and great practical effects. The content will provide varying mileage for people, and you should also go in not expecting a traditional horror movie. Most of the time, it's much more of a mystery and a thriller, with little bits of violence sprinkled throughout. But Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner both give really fantastic performances. It's the best I've seen from both of them. If nothing else, I think the film is worth seeing for the fantastic two-person show they carry throughout. All in all, Strange Darling is a really well-made, stylish, ambitious film, and I think it's definitely worth checking out. Just be careful when it comes to some of the subject matter going in. Well, that's about it. Thank you so much to my patron, the 4 mood groups, for requesting Strange Darling for me to review. This is the most engaged I've been in a first watch in a while. Of course, I clocked the twist early, but I still had no idea where the movie was going to go after that, so I had a really great time with it. But have any of you seen Strange Darling? And if so, let me know what your thoughts were down in the comments. And be sure to tune in next week as we check out an 80s classic with The Stuff. Thank you all so much for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Strange Darling. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks y'all.